Jai Hind. Welcome to Global Eye Model Intelligence Summit. Today we would be discussing a significant topic: why intelligence and defense reforms failed Israel in its war with Hamas and Hezbollah. Myself, Simran Rathor, and I will be the host and moderator for this session. We are honored to have Lieutenant Colonel J.S. Sodhi with us, a distinguished military veteran of the Indian Army, having served in the Corps of Engineers, an alumni of NDA, Khadakwasla, and IIT Kanpur. He holds an MTech in Structures, a prolific writer and editor of Global Strategic and Defense News. His contributions have earned him recognition in the World Book of Records and the Indian Book of Records. Honored with the Lifetime Achievement Award and the Icon of the Year Award, he is also a TEDx speaker and published author, shaping strategic discourse with his expertise. He would be sharing valuable insights and perspectives on the shortcomings of Israel in countering Hamas and Hezbollah. Israel's military and intelligence apparatus stands as one of the finest in the world, with its technological sophistication. However, recent scenarios have exposed various significant vulnerabilities facing many setbacks. This poses a question: what went wrong? Today, we would be discussing key issues, focusing on intelligence failure, structural strategic gaps, evolving tactics of organizations, shift in security, and geopolitical dynamics. Over to Sir.
Jai Hind participants, it is my honor and privilege to be taking part in such an esteemed seminar. First and foremost, my immense thanks and gratitude to the team of the Global Eye Intelligence to have put such an important seminar where very important topics are being discussed. My thanks to Simran for the kind words said about me. In the next about 20-25 minutes, I would be talking about what went wrong to the finest military in the world, that they had to seek a ceasefire from both Hamas and Hezbollah. To give my point of view, I shall be using a PowerPoint presentation. I'll just be sharing my screen with you. I just wanted to confirm, are my slides visible, please?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Like I said, I shall be discussing why intelligence and defense reforms failed Israel in its wars with Hamas and Hezbollah. I shall be dividing my talk into 5 phases. In phase 1, I shall be touching briefly about the background of the Israel Defense Forces, or the IDF as they are known. In phase 2, I would speak on the failure of intelligence. In phase 3, the various defense reforms which were carried out. In phase 4, I would discuss the effect of the defense reforms on the IDF. And finally, Israel's lost war against Hamas and Hezbollah. There's a very famous saying by Robert Atkins: don't fix what's not broken. With this famous saying as a prelude, I come on to phase 1, that is the background of the IDF. David Ben-Gurion proclaimed the Israeli Declaration of Independence on 14th of May 1948. And the first order he passed after the declaration of the Israeli independence was the formation of the IDF. The IDF was formed on 26th of May 1948. When the IDF was formed, it had the personnel of Haganah, which was a Zionist paramilitary organization founded in 1920, and Palmach, the elite strike force created in 1941. The main aim of both these paramilitary organizations was to protect the Jewish settlements from the attacks by the Arabs. When the IDF was formed on 26th of May 1948, both Haganah and Palmach were disbanded and all its personnel were absorbed into the IDF. Shortly after the declaration of the independence, Israel was confronted with a 4-front war. 4 countries, that is Egypt, Lebanon, Syria, and Jordan, who were backed by Iraq and Saudi Arabia, who had an overwhelming numerical superiority, apart from 270 tanks, 150 field guns and 300 aircrafts attacked Israel from all possible directions. That time, the IDF had a very less numerical force. They had just 3 tanks and no aircrafts. Yet the IDF fought very bravely on this four-front war which was launched on them. By 1949, though Israel had won the war, but they lost the Gaza Strip to Egypt and the West Bank to Lebanon. Thereafter, through a lot of trials and tribulations, basing their military doctrines on sound military foundations, and most important of all, the immense war experience that the IDF was propelled it as the finest military in the world. In the subsequent multi-front wars fought in 1956, 1967, and 1973, IDF always emerged victorious and was able to retake the Gaza Strip, the West Bank, and the Sinai Peninsula. Apart from the conventional war in which the IDF had established well itself, there were numerous special missions which were carried out by the personnel of IDF, out of which two I would like to bring to your notice. One was the Operation Wrath of God, which was to avenge the killing of the Israeli athletes in the 1972 Munich Olympics. And the next was Operation Thunderbolt, famously called as the Raid on NTB, in which 104 hostages were rescued from an hijacked Air France flight to Uganda in 1976. Conventional war supremacy, sound special missions made IDF the finest military in the world. Now, in 1985, the Hezbollah was formed and the Hamas was formed 2 years later, in 1987. Wars with Hamas have happened 5 times: 2008, 2012, 2014, 2021, and the latest, which we are aware, started on 7th October 2023, with whom the ceasefire was done on 19th of January last month. And the IDF has had 2 wars with Hezbollah, 2006 and 2024. My aim of telling about the Hamas and Hezbollah was important because this is going to now have a great bearing on what I'm going to discuss next. Coming on to phase 2 of my talk, that is the failure of intelligence. There was definitely a very massive breakdown of the intelligence collection by the intelligence agencies of Israel, whether it's Mossad, which operates for the external intelligence, the Shin Bet, which operates for the internal intelligence, or of course their own military intelligence. Though there were warning signs coming in, but the analysis was not done properly that such a big attack would be carried out by Hamas on 7th of October 2023. In fact, what experts say is that there was a 40-page document called the Jericho Wall, which was recovered months before the 7th October attack, which laid down threadbare how the attack of 7th October is going to happen. Though none of the official intelligence agencies of Israel have confirmed this, but this is widely there in the public domain. Then was the failure of the decision makers to not listen to the intelligence being provided. Intelligence can never be 100% accurate. It is, even if it is 90% accurate, even if it is 20% accurate, there is a need for the decision makers to listen to it. And in this case, where the signs were so glaring, where Egypt and America had repeatedly told Israel of a 7th October type attack, their own agencies were telling that decision makers were not listening. And if you have been following the news on Israel recently, the Prime Minister has refused to order an inquiry of commission to probe into the 7th October fiasco by another 3 months, Well, my simple question is that if there's nothing to hide, why not have an inquiry of commission? I think we all are educated, intelligent to understand why this inquiry of commission is being delayed since 7th October 2023. Another glaring point which came out, which I'll discuss subsequently with the other reasons for the failure, is the various government agencies of the IDF were getting politicized. We all are aware how the massive anti-judicial reform started, the protest started, in which people of many government organizations refused to turn up for their official work. This I'm going to talk in detail a little later. So there has to be a clear-cut distinction between the functioning of the government agencies and the political leaders. Because when it doesn't happen, a lot of things get clouded and they result in the disaster like we saw on 7th October. Now, Hamas were pretty smart that way. They knew the intelligence would be on them. So they used a word of mouth for planning and execution, thereby circumventing the electronic detection measures. Very minuscule few of the Hamas leadership knew of the attack on 7th October. The bulk of the operatives were uninformed of the 7th October attack and were told just hours before. And like I said earlier, there were inputs from USA and Egypt warning of the attack many times, but each time the Israeli political leadership chose to ignore it. Israel had of late starting laying more emphasis on electronic intelligence and the signal intelligence and lesser on the human intelligence. Well, the human intelligence is time tested, and to wean away from it will prove disastrous, as was in this case. Because, like I said earlier, Hamas knew that the electronic eavesdropping would be on them, so they circumvented it by carrying out the planning and execution using the word of mouth. Coming on to my phase 3 of my talk, that is the defense reforms. It is important to analyze that what happened that the finest military in the world, the IDF, who defeated 11-nation coalition force during the 19-day Yom Kippur War of 1973, had to seek a ceasefire with Hamas and Hezbollah this year and last year. Something drastically must have happened. And this is what I'm going to tell now in this phase. All was going well with the IDF. They were winning every war. But after the initial 4 ceasefires, 3 with Hamas starting 2008 and 1 with Hezbollah in 2006, they made a blunder. And I have no hesitation in saying this because as I'm going to talk further, I'll give my point of view. They brought in 2 defense reforms, in spite of the fact they had 4 ceasefires with 3 with Hamas, 1 with Hezbollah. The first of the defense reforms was the Gideon multi-year plan. It was announced in October 2015 with a 5-year period by their IDF Chief of Staff, Lieutenant General Gadi Eisenkot, whose aim was to reform, recalibrate, and reduce the IDF to counter the asymmetric and non-state adversary threats. Now, what had happened that, like I said earlier, there were 3 major conventional war threats which Israel had anticipated since its declaration of independence. Egypt, Syria, Lebanon, of course, Jordan. But over a period of time, Israel had a peace treaty with almost all of them. They had a peace treaty with Egypt on 26 March 1979. They had a peace treaty with Jordan on 26 October 1994. And now Syria was only left. Now, when the Arab Spring happened in 2011, And we all know Syria went into a state of internal turmoil, and Bashar Assad just managed to keep his presidency with a lot of Russian and Chinese support. Israel thought that the last of their conventional threats is over. Syria is so broken internally, it can never wage a war on Israel. With the others, like Egypt and Jordan, they had made peace through peace treaties. And it was here that they shifted their focus of their military doctrine from conventional war to war against terrorism. And as a result of the Gideon multi-year plan, apart from their main focus being shifted from conventional war to anti-terror operations, another change that they carried out was they changed their battle group formations, which was divisions before 2015. A division consists of 3 brigades, apart from the supporting armor, artillery, combat engineers, signals, all those elements make a division. They changed their combat edge formation from a division level to an integrated battle level, which is an enhanced brigade. It's called the Integrated Battle Group, IBG. As part of the Gideon multi-year plan, they also had a drastic reduction in manpower. Because cost cutting is a famous word which is used the world over, especially when it comes to a nation's military. Because for most people, a nation's military is seen as a waste of resource. Because till the time a war doesn't happen, spending on a nation's military is deemed by many as a wasteful expenditure. It's only during war, like the famous saying is there, a person remembers God during war. So because Israel thought that they have made peace with their conventional war threats, Hamas and Hezbollah are mere terror organizations. So they reduced the officer and warrant officer level post by 45,000. They conscripted forces by 30% and the non-combat power by 10%. Also, under the Gideon multi-year plan, there were drastic changes in the infantry training, where, like I said, the focus shifted totally to the anti-terror operations with a minuscule training on the conventional operations. They also had a great reduction in their armor power. 10 reserve armored brigades were reduced, and the size of each armored regiment was changed from 6 armor companies to 3 armor companies, along with 2 communal infantry and 1 company of combat engineers. And as far as artillery was concerned, they reduced 4 reserve artillery brigades. Now, after this defense reform, another set of defense reforms called NUFA was announced by Lieutenant General Aviv Kochavi, who was the IDF Chief of Staff then, on 13th of February 2020. NUFA is a Hebrew word which means momentum in English. This defense reform was for a period of 4 years from 2020 to 2024, which revolved around the historical proclivity of the IDF for offensive operations. This means they decided once more to move away from the offensive operations and focus more on defensive operations because they thought they were dealing with 2 mere terrorist organizations, Hamas and Hezbollah. NUFA also envisioned harnessing latest technologies to infuse more effective manpower. And more emphasis was laid on electronic intelligence and signal intelligence, negating human intelligence. Coming on to my next phase, what are the effect of these defense reforms on the IDF? The biggest drastic effect these 2 defense reforms had on the IDF was it induced a defensive mindset in the IDF. Because they had shifted their training from offensive to defensive, from conventional war to anti-terror operations, They created two walls, one on the southern side with the Gaza Strip, which is people called it a technological marvel before 7th October. And they created another wall 30 feet high on the northern border with Lebanon. Now, the Israeli soldiers who were on the Israeli side of both the walls and the fences thought the enemy cannot enter because these two artificial obstacles had been created. This induced a defensive mindset over a period of time. The planning for the conventional operations reduced drastically. There was hardly any talk of conventional operations in the Israeli Defense Forces discussions and deliberations. There was only focus on anti-terror operations, which would not happen every day, which would happen at irregular intervals. Hardly one, two, or three people would launch a terror attack, which they thought they were capable of repulsing. Now, because they had a reduction, an immense reduction in manpower, it had a telling effect on the human intelligence, on the response to the attack of 7th October. Because like I said earlier, we may think that during peace or non-war scenario, a soldier is not of much use. Well, a soldier during peace trains for war. Because for the ultimate test of a soldier is during war to defend his nation. I agree, in the defense forces, there are no outputs to show as such. There are no targets to be met as such. There's no sales to show how efficient a salesperson you are. There is no cost to company to show that, or saving to the company to show that by this decision, I could save so much of cost to the firm I'm working in. But then the role of a soldier, of a military, is totally different. A nation military is trained in the time to perform the time of adversity. Coming to my last phase, why I've been saying that Israel lost its war against Hamas and Hezbollah. The first reason is, though Israel was successful in eliminating the top leadership of Hamas and Hezbollah, be it Ismail Haniyeh, Yahya Sinwar, or Hassan Nasrallah, still both these organizations are growing in strength numerically. We saw the 2 or 3 hostages swaps which have taken place. The Hamas personnel have been wearing fresh uniforms. Their morale is not showing they're a vanquished force. The ease with which they have been conducting themselves on camera during the hostage swap, no defeated army will do this. We take our minds back to 1971, where India defeated Pakistan, and those footages are shown. The Pakistani soldiers' morale is down in the dumps because they have lost. But this wasn't the case with the Hamas personnel who have been shown on TV doing the hostage swaps. Over 70% of the underground tunnel network in the Gaza Strip is still intact. A great pointer to Israel's defeat or failure is the dismissal of the Defense Minister Yoav Gallant on 5th November last year. In the midst of 2 wars with Hamas and Hezbollah, if a nation's defense minister is dismissed, what does it signal? Because Yoav Gallant had become a bitter critic of the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, saying that a lot of IDF personnel are losing their lives. It is a war we cannot win. 2 days after the ceasefire with Hamas on 19 January this year, on 21st January, the Israeli Defense Force Chief of Staff, Lieutenant General Herzi Halevi, and the Southern Army Commander, Major Yaron Finkelman, resigned. Never in the military history has a military chief of a nation resigned after winning a war. Military chiefs only resign after a war when they lose the war. And like I said earlier, the 60-day war with Hezbollah ended with a ceasefire on 27 November last year, and the 15-month war with Hamas ended with a ceasefire on 19 January this year. And it has happened 4 times earlier, 3 times with Hamas and 1 time with Hezbollah. There were 2 other reasons that I would like to tell about the Israel's defeat. One is the political unrest in Israel. Because their prime minister instituted judicial reforms primarily to save himself from corruption charges, there was a massive outbreak of protest in Israel starting January 2023. Many reservists refused to join the IDF. You see, the leadership of a nation needs to understand that a nation's military is made from the same civil society of a nation. It is very easy to say men in uniform can be isolated, can be insulated. They can't. Today, when you have 24/7 cable TV channels, you have a smartphone in your hand. You have broadband on your laptop, on your desktop. How can a soldier of a nation's military be isolated? He is of the same society, belongs to the same society. His parents, his siblings, his friends, relatives are there in the civil society. He does get affected of what is happening in the civil street. So this is one important point which every nation's political leadership needs to understand. For whatever a nation's military may do for their political gains, the nation's military does get affected. And the second reason for the defeat was the hyped ultra-nationalism for power. In 2018, Israel enacted a law called the Nation-State Law, which established the 21.1% Israeli Arabs as second-class citizens. It did help the Prime Minister Netanyahu to remain in power, but it wrecked the Israeli society internally. Remember, a fractured and a divided nation is always an easy prey for its enemies. That is why it is always said the more internally united we are, the more difficult it will be for the external enemies to wage a war. Be it the political unrest started from January 2023, or be it the nation-state law of 2018, Hamas was watching every move of Israel. Since most of the participants here are of the young generation, my request to each one of you is, it is in your and my hands to make our country more internally united. It is a lesson we need to learn from the defeat of Israel. Finally, I would like to conclude with the famous quote of Grant Snapps, who was the United Kingdom Defense Secretary on January 15 last year, when he said, "The era of peace dividend which came with the end of the Cold War is over, with the conflicts in the Middle East and Ukraine, and these wars are the forerunners of future wars." Unquote. The era of modern wars is yet to start. With 3 wars on the horizon: war for Taiwan in 2027, war for Spratly Islands in 2029, and a 2-front war jointly by China and Pakistan on India in 2035. The era of modern wars is yet to start. It is for each one of us to drive lessons as we deem fit from Israel's defeat against Hamas and Hezbollah. I have finished here. In case anyone has any questions, it would be an honor to answer them.
Questions, anyone? I would like to ask a question.
Sure, please.
First of all, thank you for a very enlightening presentation. And my question is, how would this define the security and strategic dynamics at regional level? How do we see the role of regional players like Iran and geopolitical alliances affect Israel's calculations?
Well, you see, what has happened is that after Israel had to seek a ceasefire with both Hamas and Hezbollah, definitely standing in the Middle East has gone down drastically. And like I said earlier, it has had previous wars with both the organizations. It has never emerged victorious. Each time it had to seek a ceasefire. Now the Middle East is going through a very different phase now. Israel is on the back foot, though America is supporting it. But how long can it support is the main question now. Russia and China are becoming very powerful. China's aggressive designs are known to all. Their economic rise, the military rise is giving jitters even to a superpower like America. China is the most dominant player in the Middle East. We saw last year they had the Beijing Declaration where 16 Palestinian organizations for the first time signed a joint agreement. We have seen how last year China could end the 6-year Cold War or feud between Iran and Saudi Arabia. So in the Middle East, China is becoming a big player. On 21st December 2011, Barack Obama, the American president, announced his pivot to Asia policy, wherein he shifted his majority of the American troops stationed in the Middle East to the Indo-Pacific to counter China's growing threat. Well, as on date, after 14 years, we have seen the mayhem happened in Middle East. We have seen how China has grown more aggressive in the Indo-Pacific. So the Middle East is only going to simmer and burn more. We may see a few decades of peace, but there will be bloodbath again. And like our External Affairs Minister, Dr. S. Jaishankar said yesterday, the only solution in the Middle East is a two-state solution. Even the American President, Joe Biden, repeatedly had been saying after 7th October that the only solution to peace in the Middle East is a two-state solution. Russia and China both are strong advocates of a two-state solution. President Donald Trump has yet not said a word about the two-state solution. But ultimately, if Israel wants to see peace, it has to agree for a two-state solution. Otherwise, Middle East will keep on burning. Maybe a few decades of peace, maybe a few years of peace, but it will keep on burning.
Thank you, sir. Questions? We now open the floor for questions. Any questions from anyone?
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Sir, I had a very simple question. What do you make of the Arab strategy to counter Trump's plan of Gaza?
Well, the Arabs are very clear that Trump's plan of converting the Gaza Strip into a Riviera-like resort is not going to happen. They have also been supported by France, by Germany, by the United Kingdom that this plan is not possible. So the Arabs are not going to support it. Now, Trump will definitely try in his 4-year tenure to achieve it, but it is unlikely. Even the Hamas has said they are not for this plan. You see, if we go a little into history, most of the mainstream media houses have been calling the Israel-Hamas war as a war of two religions. But if you read books by politically non-aligned authors, this is a word which I stress on many TV channels. If you read books by politically non-aligned authors, it is not a war of two religions. It is a war over a piece of land. If you go into the genesis of this, there are 4 important documents which one should read to understand this issue. One is the McMahon-Hussein correspondence of 1913. The second is the Balfour Declaration of 1917. The third is the United Nations Resolution 181/2 of 29 November 1947. And fourth is a very good book by David Hurst called Guns and Roses, Roots of Violence in the Middle East. These four documents will exactly throw light on what this issue is. It is very easy to whip up passions today using religion. But this is not a war of two religions. And that is why the United Nations, in the resolution of 29 November 1947, clearly said that this area of Palestine will be divided into two countries, one Israel for the Jews and one Palestine for the Arabs. Even when after the 1967 war, when Israel took back the Gaza Strip and the West Bank, United Nations passed a resolution number 242, which said that the annexation of the Gaza Strip and the West Bank by Israel is illegal. And both these resolutions stand as on date. So as far as the Arabs are concerned, they are not going to give up on the two-state solution. Today, more and more European countries are supporting them. Why? Because as the truth is being known, earlier there was only one source of information, that was the print media. The entire print media decades back was controlled by the West. So nothing could really come out. Then when the electronic media came, again it is dominated by the West. Again, they never let the truth come out. But what changed? Why is it? Has anyone wondered that when the earlier four wars happened of Israel with Hamas till 2021 and the earlier war with Hezbollah 2006, there was no global protest against Israel attacks. But why it happened this time only? Well, because this time the social media had come in a big way by now. And as people were using social media, they were able to understand the genesis of this issue. And the genesis of this issue is a piece of land which is the bone of contention between the two warring factions. All these stories of, the protests in United States being funded by some agency which is pro-Arab, which is pro-China and all that. All these conspiracy theories will abound everywhere. But if you see the social media channels where facts are discussed, they have an immensely high viewership. Because today people want to know the truth. And as people are knowing the truth, their conception about this war, about this issue is changing. So as far as the Arabs are concerned, their support for a two-state solution will always remain. In fact, just a few days back, the Saudi Arabian Crown Prince has said that he will not have diplomatic relations with Israel till the time the two-state solution is not agreed. So this is their outlook, which is going to remain now.
Sir, with regards to the Oslo peace process, it went on for a few years, but we saw that the main contention point was the right to return, because the Israelis enacted this law in 1948 that all the Jews have the right to return to their homeland. But the Palestinians, since they wanted to instate that law, the Israelis were not agreeing to this fact that they should have a state of their own, because as and when they have a state of their own, they will enact the right to return. And the 7 million Palestinians who are already dispersed outside of the Palestinian lands would have a chance to return. In that context, where do you see Trump's plan? I'm not going back to the entire plan of displacing Gazans and the people in the West Bank, but my point is, if he is deporting outsiders from the US, how can he force Jordan and Egypt by threatening them to cut their aid and take in people from other countries? This is the basic contradiction that he's going with.
Exactly, I totally agree with you. That is why countries like Egypt and Jordan have also refused to support this plan. They've refused to take any Palestinians. Because it is a basic human tendency, you always remain to your roots. How can a person leave his roots? It is simply not possible. A person only leaves when he seeks or she seeks a better employment somewhere. But even after working, given a chance, everyone wants to come back to their motherland, wherever it is. So, the very genesis of this issue, or the very genesis of this Trump proposal, is not finding merit with most of the countries globally. As for the Oslo peace record, which you rightly brought out, had the Oslo peace record, which was signed by the Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin, who was later assassinated, had it been implemented, a two-state solution would have been made. There would have been peace. Today, who's losing out the most? It is Israel. Ever since the war with Hamas in October 23, about 4 lakh of their citizens have left the country. Their economy is going down. Their main, pivot of the economy, the agriculture, there are no people to work in the fields because all those workers in the fields were from other countries. They all have fled. So until and unless a major change comes in Israel thinking, which Yitzhak Rabin had, been bold to recognize that. I would like to, also draw your attention that in 2006 war with Hezbollah, the spokesperson of the Israeli Defense Forces, Rear Admiral Daniel Shamron, had said, it is not a military solution to this issue. There has to be a political solution. The same words were echoed by the present IDF spokesperson, Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Hagari. So the point remains that for whatever proposals come from anywhere, ultimately it is only the two-state solution which Yitzhak Rabin had to write under the Oslo peace records, but after his assassination, it went into cold burner. So till the time that is not achieved, like I said earlier, peace is impossible in the Middle East.
Sir, just a last follow-up question based on the remarks that you made about Yitzhak Rabin. I have always wondered that anyone who proposes peace in the region on the matter, like we have two great examples, Anwar Sadat and Yitzhak Rabin. Anyone who desires peace is hated as someone who lost for the country, and they are assassinated. So where do you think, is it because of the political factors or the societal factors? Are the elements in the society too extremist that does not support a political process, or is it just the political arrangement?
It is just the political arrangement because a person by nature wants peace. I would not like to fight with my neighbor. When I know internally I am wrong, when I know internally I have taken certain portion of his house, I mean, we may say anything about the United Nations, but the fact is, right from its inception till date, America is the biggest player in the UN. If there are two resolutions of 1947 and 1967, which I just mentioned earlier, which put Israel having done the incorrect thing, I mean, there cannot be a global conspiracy involving America against Israel. These two UN resolutions still stand. So somewhere down the line, there is some fault from Israel's side. So what Yitzhak Rabin tried was very correct. And like I said, every person would want peace. Who wants to fight day in, day out? On the other side, you see a person whose portion of land has been taken, or a small portion of his house has been taken. For him, that is everything. What does he have to lose more? So it is not the bulk of the people who want to fight. It is few political leaders who incite people. People get incited. And though in the heart they want peace, but there are few political leaders, like in their case, who keep on whipping up communal passions, who keep on whipping up, greater Israel and talking of from the land to the sea, all those famous quotes where they give. Now they're talking greater Israel, which includes part of Lebanon, Syria, Jordan. I mean, let us be practical. It is a modern world. Countries have demarcated borders, and those who do not have demarcated borders, the United Nations has passed resolutions for them. So somewhere we have to give the rule of law some credit, some credence. So it is not the bulk of the citizens who want fights. It is only few political leaders who instigate. And because, their speeches are relayed many times over, so the thing starts sinking in. And obviously, result is there to see.
Thank you, sir. Sir, I would love to discuss West Asia with you for hours, but we are running short of time, and you have been gracious enough to give us more than half an hour, sir. So we are genuinely grateful to you. We know that you have a very busy schedule, day in, day out. So we thank you for your time, and I would like to pass it on to Simran for the concluding remarks, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. We sincerely thank Lieutenant Colonel J.S. Sodhi for sharing his expert insights with us today. They were really invaluable. We appreciate our audience for joining us today. If you found this discussion valuable, please stay connected with us for future sessions. Thank you. Jai Hind.
Thank you, team Global Eye Intelligence and Simran, for the very well conducted seminar and for having given me the opportunity to speak. My immense gratitude, and I wish your think tank immense success. God bless.
Thank you,
Jai
sir.
Hind.
Thank you. Jai Hind, sir.